Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Virtual Thursdays to our literary series. It is the last Virtual Thursday of 2024. And I really love that you all are here. And mostly, you're not here because it's the last Virtual Thursday Diary Literary Series. You are here because of our feature, Lee Varon. And tell you a little something about Lee. Ta-da. She was born in Chicago and moved to Boston to attend college. She's a clinical social worker and a single parent. She's had a personal experience with members of her own family who have substance abuse disorder. She wrote My Brother Is Not a Monster to give voice to many children who love someone dealing with this disease. She followed up with her second children's book, A Kids Book About Overdose, practical research in the ongoing opioid crisis. And she has a new book of poetry as well, which is ta-da, you can get it at Finishing Line Press, and it's called The Last Bed. And Lee, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tim, and thank you for inviting me. So this is the book, The Last Bed, and as I often say, writing is really therapy for me, and this book was very therapeutic because it helped me get through so many difficult times with my older son's addiction/substance use disorder. So I'm just going to read a couple poems. Let's see, I have about 7 minutes, I guess. I'll start, it's divided into 3 sections. It's At the Soup Kitchen, The Last Bed, and Birds. And I say birds, although they're featured in a lot of these poems, because birds were my healing place where I went to get sustenance when I was going through difficult times. This is called Extinct, and it has an epigraph by Lucille Clifton. So many languages have fallen off the edge of the world, Lucille Clifton. This is where they used to roam, the ivory-billed woodpecker, through mangroves, their missing poems, a tinny trumpet flicker, fallen off the edge of the world into this shimmering void, a silence unfurled, into another forever destroyed. 100,000 souls overdosed last year. Who remembers the shape of their hands, their lost poems that feed vanishing ghosts, the stars that braided strands of their hair? In 1935, someone recorded the ivory-billed bird, and what of these others? Unheard. So I'm just going to go right into the 3rd section, which is called The Last Bed, which really chronicles my journey in dealing with my son's addiction. And it starts with kindergarten. First day of kindergarten, in your sweater vest, clutching your dinosaur lunchbox, smile wide. Who was to know the Tyrannosaurus and Triceratops would take over your life, ravenous, unforgiving? And me clutching my camera, trembling at the world you are about to enter. And this is how many times. And my son was in many rehabs, and one of the rehabs he was in, it was a wilderness program, and they had to run 3 miles at the end, a 3-mile run to graduation line. You know, it was like the finish of the program. How many times? The sky cracks like a broken fortune cookie. Is this your life's final draft? Shuddering in a homeless shelter, dope sick? Can't you go back, put in another tape? At the wilderness program, they drove you into the desert where you camped for 6 weeks, lost your name, became coyote, sparked fires from juniper bark. I rented a car, drove 90 on deserted roads, dodging rabbits at dusk. After running 3 miles, you crossed the finish line. How was I to know there is no finish line? Endless detoxes, holding tanks, walls scoured of graffiti, cigarette butts overflowing coffee cans, locked doors, transition centers, halfway houses where drugs still seep in and tears await as I sip from the straw of hope, following the filigree of an angel's wing. And let's see. excuse me. This is called Thanksgiving. This Thanksgiving, you're sober. Your words aren't slurred, eyes aren't bloodshot. You and your brother tease me about my driving. Slowly, I reach our destination out past Holyoke, Lee, Hudson to Millerton. Silos, still groups of cows and sheep replace shopping malls, service areas. Hemlock, fir, and white birch replace maple and oak. Breathing replaces the clenched chest, strained muscles. I walk into the shadowed hills just for today. Going to the YMCA. No, I think actually, because I don't have much time, I'm going to do this Nighthawk. I'm going to raise my hand when there are italics in the text. Nighthawk. Some pictures in my bird book circa 1949 are missing. You've been missing for a long time. Even when you were here, you were missing. I bring back no words from my sighting of you at night crossing 72nd Street. In my book, the nighthawk is missing. The nighthawk is constantly in the air, flying in a zigzag path. You, sleepless, hollow-eyed, crossing 72nd Street, falling down the metro stairs. Unseen, I watch you. Nighthawks dive and bank as they feed on flying insects. You, diving and banking as you move forward like a low-flying bird in the crepuscular evening. Both display cryptic coloration, gray, white, buff, blue, mottled, now deleted from the pages of my life. This is tattoos. This says an epigraph from E.E. Cummings, which is, love is the voice under all silences. Imprinted on your skin, tattoos, black, green, gold sleeves encircling your arms. Ghosts of the departed, Laura, R.I.P. in blue letters. And Happy, your roommate in Long Beach, who never smiled, found with a needle in his arm, Match.com flickering on the screen. This lost assembly where love exhausted, love derailed is still love. A hum between syllables, under everything, love torn yet still love. Love whispers under all silences. And this is moments. They say geographical cures don't work. I was learning the wrong language all along. I took you to a cottage beneath black palms, orange raspberries beneath our window. Sweet jasmine curling, excuse me, curling into crushing hope. You surf silver highways looking for something never found. Do the language of love and addiction intersect somewhere? I sold the cottage and came home. When I returned, it was plowed under, even the black palms gone. Jasmine came to remind me we'd had moments of happiness. And so getting through all this, I had a lot of help from various groups, parent groups mainly. And this is called Thanks, with gratitude to my support groups. Thanks for accompanying me on this lonely journey of losing everything to regaining small bits and losing again. On this roller coaster that is loving an addict, a word we no longer use, but what shall I say? Loving the person, hating the disease. Loving a person who is sick as we become sick with worry, with fear. There was always the cottage with its dark palms and golden raspberries. I clung to that, waiting for a boy I once knew to open the gate. Waiting became a life, became breathing, became this moment too. And this is the last poem in this section, which is called At the Garden on your 8th anniversary of recovery. You wait for me as I greet our oak, our Carolina wren high in the branches. At the garden, wild strawberries redden beneath a tangle of green, among lettuce and small clumps, yellow tomato flowers, all beckoning, waiting. Years ago, we sped our bikes around this pond, crashing against each other as we barreled into our lives. How many years not talking, barely talking, arguing, accusing, then just missing. I watched for a bird I thought would never arrive, just like I never thought you'd make it to 40. We watered the garden, home for pizza, salad, dessert, this bowl of wild strawberries. And I guess that's about it for time. I have one more poem. Is that okay, Tim? It's called Vigil with Hummingbirds. At night, their photos are projected on buildings. We hold our lit cell phones to the black sky and pray. Someone loved each, washed their dead bodies in dreams. They want you to remember their names, their faces, before the addiction set in. To know they'll return, like hummingbirds, fly through the missing pages of our lives. Thank you. Was that good on time, Tim?
That's great. What a great reading. And as V Sesling says, your poems are so touching. Now you obviously you write a lot on substance abuse disorder. I have to promote this too, because I love this.
Oh,
I
thank
love
you.
this book.
That's really important to me more than the poetry because, as you probably know, it features using Narcan for young children. It's a children's book, but suicide, drug overdoses have just been found to be gone down by 17% in the last year.
Those are good numbers.
It's amazing.
Did you get any pushback from that book? Like, how dare you talk about drugs to young people in like a
Yeah.
children's book?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it was barred from one library in Montana because people had the mistaken notion that if you're writing a book for young children, and this is for young children, and it features, talking about drugs, that it's going to promote drug addiction. And obviously, that's not the purpose of the books, either one of the children's books I wrote.
It's so funny how backwards things are, even like with gender identification. Some reason you mention something or you write a preventative book, for some reason people think it's going to encourage that behavior.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I have gotten a little bit. I mean, one of the things in that last book that I did was I struggled a lot with it because I do talk about the use of Narcan, but I didn't want to get too specific, like rescue breathing and all, what you can do if you're a child and you happen upon a person that's overdosed, like it could be your parent, it could be your older sibling. What do you do? Because I thought if I get too specific, people will just freak out. So I said, just call 911, tell the operator what you're seeing, what's happening, wait until some help arrives, that kind of thing. I had to be kind of general about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big advocate that if you've got anyone in your house that's older, a teenager and older, there should be Narcan in your house.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, when you write about poetry about substance abuse disorder, not even necessarily specific to your son or yourself, what images become like repetitive images? In other words, images you might have to flush away because these are your go-to images and
Well,
metaphors, so to speak.
I think the thing that really came for me the most was there's such darkness and addiction. I mean, there's just such, and I've been through so many funerals. I've been through so many parents groups where people have lost children that I think the thing that would come to mind a lot was this, it's a sort of spiritual thing, but it was birds. Birds were like this spiritual, you have to transcend all this horror to some other place because otherwise you'll just be swamped by it and you can't function really. But it is a very dark place, addiction. And certainly the roller coaster ride of, relapse and, recovery back and forth, it strains you a lot. It's very hard.
I also know that people do get uncomfortable when you talk about recovery, especially when you're talking about harder drugs. I think around alcohol, it's sort of softened a bit. But if you're reading your poetry, do you sense that same discomfort in the people that might be in the audience?
Well, I heard once when I was at an open meeting that recovery is the way people define recovery for themselves. I mean, you have to respect what they see as recovery might not be what you see as recovery. And that it's important to respect their view of how they see their own recovery.
Now, do you promote, and I hate to use promote because it sounds like you're trying to take advantage of a situation, but like you show your work or go to rehabs and teach workshops and or read your poetry or present your poetry at rehabs or people that are in recovery? Recovery.
No,
What
no,
is,
I actually, well, I have a good friend who works at Boston Healthcare for the Homeless, and he sometimes reads some of my people who are in the program. He does read some of it sometimes, and people can relate to that. And I've read it, mainly to parent groups. So I have read it to parent groups because I think a lot of parents can relate to what, I'm talking about when I, talk about this journey I went on with my son.
yeah, because I remember there was a place in Arlington called Right Turn, which was started by a lot of musicians, and they would have
Right.
presentations of poets and musicians. So I wondered if you hooked on to any places similar to that.
No, that's not around anymore, is it,
I
Tim?
don't think so. I think it
No.
took a left turn.
I remember, I
Right turn took a
remember,
left
yeah,
turn.
I remember that guy, yeah, that he used to come to Stone Soup sometimes. And yeah, but no, yeah, no, I don't know of any place like that really.
You think your books are more help in prevention or advocacy?
Well, I'm hoping that the kids' books are prevention because they're aimed at younger children who may have a sibling who has substance use disorder. And they don't glorify it at all. And they talk about ways of taking care of yourself, if you find yourself in this situation. Um, but advocacy, I mean, I'm a long time attender at Mass Organization of Addiction Recovery, and Marianne Frangulis was nice, the director, who she just stepped down, was nice enough to give me a blurb for the book. And I mean, any place that I am able to talk about it, like, I will talk about it and the importance of having awareness about, I'm talking in February at, it's a group called Moms for All Paths of Recovery, in other words. I'm just talking about my kids' books and, the importance of letting young children, very young children, know about this and not hiding it from them and letting them know what they can do if something should happen and how they can prevent, how they can keep themselves safe.
It's so important.
Yeah.
Um, do you ever, or I take the opposite end from the writing perspective. When you're writing about recovery or substance abuse disorder in poetry, does it ever get tiresome to write? Because I know that my certain go-to subjects, sometimes I just don't feel like doing the go-to. And what's your second go-to?
Um, my second go-to is like mental health. That's my next book. Because I'll tell you, I mean, I'm glad I got this book finished. I really am, but I lived with these poems for a long time. And I was getting at the end tired of them, and I really didn't want to write about addiction anymore. And my son's is in a better place. And I'm not in a group anymore. So I felt like I was moving on. So my go-to now is writing about mental health issues, really.
What did you write about before? When you were a younger writer and you're writing about before you wrote recovery poems?
It was always therapy for me, Tim. It's always been therapy. I mean, I I mean, I have a chapbook called Letters to a Pedophile, and I knew somebody I was very close to, but later took a dark turn. And the person's not alive, so I guess I can talk about it. But um, that was my way of processing, that relationship. And, so, I mean, it's always for me, those are the things I was writing about. I came, my grandmother had a very tragic sort of life, and I wrote a lot of poems about her because I was very identified with her. And even though she was a very dyed-in-the-wool racist, bigoted person who lived in the South, but she was a very loving, doting grandmother. And that discrepancy, that was something I often would write about.
Now, what is your feeling about mental health awareness with quotations around it, substance abuse awareness? Because I have strong opinions that it's basically just like lighting, like a candlelight vigil. Like people like to talk about it, but how do you create real empathy around these issues?
I think sometimes you'll see something on the news or you'll hear somebody who knows somebody. I think when it touches you personally, or somebody who's been touched by it, and they're willing, and that's why I guess I am advocating for people to open up about this. Because if you don't open up about it, then nobody's going to know your story. And you might find out that the person sitting next to you in the office or whatever is going through hell with her child who's in and out of, treatment or whatever. But you're never going to know that unless people are willing to talk about this. So because it's such a stigma, I mean, it's very hard for people to be open about it. But progress is being made, and I think that's really important.
Do you get people reaching out to you because of all of this? Like I read your book. I have a niece, a nephew who is struggling. What should I do, for example?
Yes, I do. And I'm not an expert. So I basically, in my first children's book, I have a glossary, a glossary of terms, and I also have resources. And basically, I just point people towards resources because that's the best I can do.
I think it's
And the other thing, I guess, Tim, is that I do try to make it clear that, I mean, there are different paths to recovery, if you want to call it that, to healing. And what's right for one person, which might be medicated assisted treatment, might not be right for another person. And it's important to sort of have all the options on the table, and that people can choose something that feels right to them.
who are other poets and essayists that are writing on recovery that you read or you respect,
I
or
don't know.
memoirists?
I don't know too many, really.
Do you read memoirs on the subject?
I did, but I threw them all away, to be honest. I had tons of books about addiction when I was going through all this. And once I finished this book, and once, like I said, my son is in a more stable place, and also I moved, I got rid of a lot of that. And I'm trying to think, well, there were some books, and I wish I could, off the top of my head, that were quite good. There was a mother-daughter who they joint wrote a book. Do you know that book I'm talking about? Constance, it was great. I just don't remember it. And my son thought it was great too. I mean, there are some really good first-hand accounts out there that are wonderful, but I'm drawing a blank.
This is an interesting question for Joe, but from Joseph. He said his wife had cancer for 25 years. It reoccurred several times. It sounds like the cycle of addiction recovery. Friends would blow it off as if it was not a chronic illness. Did you experience something similar?
Well, there's compassion fatigue, it's like, oh God, your son's relapsed again. Oh God, he's back in treatment again. I mean, it gets tiresome to people. Um, I would think. I can understand how it could. So I think what you have to do is find a select group of trusted people that really can have compassion. And where I found that, and I don't know about this person, if there's a similar group for, people who are with somebody with cancer, but I found it in parent groups because they knew what it was like to go, oh my God, it's great. He's been in, recovery. He's been in the sober house. He's going into treatment. And then, oh no, the next day, oh, he's on the streets. He's in jail. He's overdosed. He was Narcaned. It was just tragic hearing this, the ups and downs. And after a while, you sort of you realize, I myself, I would be like that. Oh, wow, he's in this wilderness program. Everything's going to be great. And about maybe 5 or 10 treatment centers after that, you say, no, wait a minute, you see it in a different way. You see it as, this is a long-term thing. There is no finish line. This is an ongoing maintenance program. And let's hope for today that your loved one is okay. That's all you can hope for.
Children's book, poetry. Have you done any other forms, essays, memoirs, novel?
Actually, I'm working really hard, laboriously, I would say, on a middle grade young adult book about a young girl who has guess what, an older sibling who has substance use disorder. So I would love to publish that.
That sounds great. And I really found that our little chat and your reading was great. I'm going to point people to, there's The Last Bed. And it's right on the finishinglinepress.com. And there you can find Lee's book. What a wonderful cover. And
Thank you.
And if you want to find out more about Lee,
I have a website, yeah.
I was on your website and now I can't go. And now I can't go back. Lee Varon, VARON.com.
It's
And
Lee S. I use my middle initial, Lee S. Varon.
Lee S. Varon. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the correction.
Yeah, it's for my website. Yeah.
Lee, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thanks for those viewing on the stream and those that have supported us through 2024. Our next dire is January, what is it? January 16th with Eileen Pollock. And so, we got taking a few weeks off, which is great. And those that are watching the streaming would like to come in for the open mic. There is a link to join us and I'll happily let you in. So thank you all. And we will be with you later. And people that are in the room right now, stick around for the open mic.